We're ready to go.
Okay, good evening. Welcome to the February 2026 meeting of the City of Bowling Green Zoning Board of Appeals is in session. Will the secretary please?
Jeff Crawford.
Here.
Tim Emmerich.
Here.
Bob McCumber.
Here.
Brad Noble.
Here.
David Flager.
Here.
Jay Sockman. Here. Jerry
Here.
Anderson.
Yes. Here. Very good. We have a quorum. The first order of business is the approval of the minutes from the December 2025 meeting as previously circulated. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Flager. Is there a second?
Second.
By Mr. Emmerich. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The minutes are approved. First of all, welcome to our humble hometown here. And I'd like to say at the onset, we understand that zoning is sometimes difficult for people to understand, particularly when the city's trying to tell you what you can or can't do with your property. And with that in mind, I'd like to encourage you to be at ease. We are trying to keep this as informal as we can. We're fellow citizens here and generally nice people, and we are interested to hear what you have to say and listen to your concerns this evening. So our zoning code was updated just a couple of years ago, so presumably it's a fairly modern document that recognizes that one size doesn't fit all when it comes to certain regulations. As we proceed tonight, I will read the request that's on the agenda. The city's planning director will then give us an overview of the situation and the applicable sections of the zoning code. And as the applicant, you will then be invited to present your case, and others who may want to do so will be allowed to testify at that time as well. Anyone who does provide testimony this evening must have standing in order to do so. And we may consider only credible evidence in this case that consists of factual, firsthand, or expert testimony. During this time, the board may have questions for you and others. That's the appropriate time. The public comment portion of the hearing will be closed. You may return to your seats at that time, and the board will then discuss amongst ourselves the request and testimony and any other evidence that's offered this evening. At that point in time, the board may either approve the request, deny the request, modifications, or table it for further information. Appeals to the decisions of the board may be made to the Wood County Court of Common Pleas, and as such, this is a quasi-judicial proceeding. Anyone who testifies must swear an oath to tell the truth, and as I mentioned, have standing, meaning that you would be directly affected and in a different way as to the request than members of the general public. A court reporter is also present and will be taking a verbatim record of the hearing, and a transcript could be made as necessary there. If you haven't already done so, there's a sign-in sheet at the back of the door. Would please sign in. At this time, if you intend to or think you might testify in this hearing this evening, would you please stand and raise your right hand? I do solemnly swear that the testimony I give in these matters this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
I do.
Very good. All right. We, as I said, only have the one case this evening, and it involves J. Peter Millen, Esquire from the Spengler Nathanson law firm, on behalf of ATP Investments 2 LLC, the property owner, has requested an appeal of the opinion and interpretation of the zoning code by the planning director concerning the number of signs allowed at 1502 East Wooster Street, which is zoned interstate commerce and considered a multi-tenant building. Per section 150.85 and table 28 of the zoning code, a maximum of 2 signs are allowed, quote, if there are multiple businesses on the same parcel or located within the same building, close quote. Heather, can you give us the summary and rundown on the code sections, please?
Yes, thank you. First of all, in your packet, I did put a memo in there about the meeting tonight and some additional history. So I will summarize the letter. It's to provide additional background information on the request to appeal the opinion and interpretation of the zoning code by the planning director concerning the number of signs allowed at 1502 East Wooster Street. The property is zoned IC, which stands for Interstate Commerce. The planning director has determined section 150.85 and table 28 found in section 150.84 of the zoning code, a maximum of 2 signs are allowed if there are multiple businesses on the same parcel or located within the same building. There are currently 2 wall signs approved for each business. Attached are the applicable zoning code sections, which I'll review again during this presentation. Below is additional background information with an aerial view of the property also in your packet. The prior building at this location was demolished this past spring for the construction of a new building, which was completed in August. On August 4th, sign permits were applied for to construct 2 wall signs for each business and to utilize the existing pylon, which staff believes was approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals on April 14th, 1993, due to being located in the front yard setback, not due to the number of signs, which back then was limited to a maximum of 3 signs per business. And we reference Exhibit A. City staff let the sign company know that the zoning code only allows 2 signs for a multi-tenant structure, and in order to approve the sign permit application, a sign would have to be removed from the sign package application. The sign company responded via email that the property owner would like to move forward with the wall signs and consider a variance for the pylon in the future, reference Exhibit B. The city approved the sign permits with only approval of the wall signs, making a note that the pylon sign could not be utilized. See Exhibit C. The pylon has remained since the business opened in August, and the property owner decided to apply for variance on October 3rd, 2025. The variance request, which read as follows, was denied by a tie vote of 3-3, which reads as follows. New Signs Ohio, LLC, on behalf of Jersey Mike's and Wingstop at 1502 East Wooster Street, has requested a variance to allow the refacing of an existing 8-foot by 8-foot pylon sign, which would cause each business to exceed the maximum number of 2 signs allowed per business by 1 sign, currently permitted for 2 wall signs for each business. 1502 East Wooster Street also had a setback-related variance on October 10th of 2001, which is Exhibit D, which the new building was built using, and the site plan is enclosed, Exhibit E. So getting back to the code, under section 150.84, the sign regulations table, table 28, lists the zoning of IC, the sign types permitted that are allowed, and then the number of signs per business, 3 maximum unless the cross symbol applies, which indicates a maximum of 2 signs are allowed if there are multiple businesses on the same parcel or located within the same building, i.e. a multi-tenant building or building with shared walls. Under section 150.100, appeals from the planning director are actually a power also of the Zoning Board of Appeals. And that section reads, appeals from any determinations of the planning director shall be made to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Also under section 150.104, Zoning Board of Appeals, appeals of planning director decision. Under A, an appeal may be taken from a decision of the planning director with respect to the interpretation of or decision made under this chapter or from the decisions of the Historic Preservation Commission under chapter 158. Here's an aerial view of the property showing there is basically 2 parcels there, so one pretty narrow parcel and a larger parcel there. Using pictometry, this is a view of the old building, since we don't have it updated yet to be able to see the new building. Another view of the property of the side there along Mercer. Another view of the front of the property. And another view of the side of the property. And here's a picture of the existing signage at the front there. This would be facing East Wooster, along with that existing pylon. And then here are another view of the 2 wall signs there, again, facing East Wooster. Another view of a wall sign, this would be the west wall of the building, and that would be facing South Mercer Road. And here is the pylon sign that they originally applied to reface with the business there, Jersey Mike's and Wingstop. And then as part of your packet, I just, we gave you a copy, of course, of the application and their reasoning behind requesting the appeal of the interpretation of the zoning code. We did not receive any written correspondence, emails, or phone calls after the required notifications were sent. An advertisement was placed in the newspaper of general circulation as required. A site notice was placed at the site. The other notices required by the Administrative Code were posted in the proper time and location. A letter was mailed, first-class mail, to the tax mailing address of the owner and adjoining property owners. Therefore, all the procedure requirements for the hearing have been met.
Thank you. Gentlemen, since I know everybody else in the room, you must be the applicant. So who's ever going to speak, please come to the podium and state your name and your address for us for the record.
Thank you for having us tonight. My name is Attorney Pete Millen. My address is 900 Adams, Toledo, Ohio. That's where Spangler Nathanson is located.
Okay. Mr. Millen, before we start, I'd like to clarify as a procedural matter what exactly we're being asked to consider this evening, and to make sure this isn't just a way to somehow get a second bite at the apple. As you know, in November 2025, the board considered an area variance for signage at this location, and the variance request was for a total of 3 signs per business when, as Heather pointed out, the code only allows for 2. And at that time, that request was not approved. I'm struggling to understand how we should proceed right now, and I want to get some input from you. First, the public notice for this hearing states that the applicant is now appealing the opinion and interpretation of the zoning code by the planning director, as Heather outlined in section 150.100 and 150.104, and is concerning the number of signs allowed at 1502 East Wooster. And that's considered a multi-tenant building that is limited to 2 signs per business. Second, the application that was submitted by the applicant states that it is requesting, quote, requesting that this property be granted a variance from being considered a, quote, multi-tenant building or building with shared walls that is restricted to signs per business. It's not mentioned in there the fact that the notice that was sent out talks about an appeal of the opinion interpretation of the planning director, only that you are again requesting a variance. And it appears from the attachment to the application that's what you're doing, because you go through and address the 7 criteria that are in the code for proving a practical difficulty, the Duncan factors that control, and that appeals from the decision of the planning director don't require that exercise. Finally, we are limited, as I think you probably know, to considering what is included in the public notice. For instance, if the public notice indicates a request for a parking variance, at that same meeting, we can't grant a variance for a setback on a building. Likewise, in this case, the public notice included that stated that this was an appeal of the opinion and interpretation of the zoning code of the planning director versus a variance. So, you know, it's kind of that, where are we falling here? So I just wanted to ask you, given that we've already considered and did not approve a variance request for 3 signs per business, we can't take that up again. So is it your intention this evening to appeal the opinion and interpretation of the planning director of the zoning code regarding this matter of the 3 signs?
It is our opinion to challenge that determination. I think the intent was that to do so would necessarily require the consideration that this sign be allowed, which would be a variance from the strict reading of the code. I know that sounds like a conflation of the two, but what we're here today asking is that this property be treated similarly to the other end units of multi-tenant buildings that are allowed to have more than 2 signs historically.
Okay, we'll get into the facts in a minute, but I want to get through this procedure matter first. So it is your intention to appeal the planning director's interpretation of the zoning code?
Correct.
As opposed to asking for another area variance?
Correct.
Okay, so that's off the table. Now, last thing on the procedure. Section 150.104 that talks about the appeals of the decisions of the planning director requires that the board be given a 20-day notice after the decision of the planning director. I might not have said that clearly. The code requires that an appeal of the decision of the planning director be filed within 20 days. of the applicant being notified of the planning director's decision. My question is, was that done?
No, not to my knowledge.
Okay, help me understand, and I want to work with you here, but help me understand how we can move forward. We've already decided that the area variance is off the table. We've already considered that, and it was not approved. So now we're being asked to consider an appeal of the planning director's interpretation and decision on the zoning code, but the proper notice wasn't given. So how can we move forward?
Well, I think, I want to back up to, if we're saying that the published notice was only for an appeal of the zoning board, I think if you look at the application and what was requested in the application, is for a variance request also, especially when you look at the plain letter of the application. So I guess that if the comment is that the notice that was sent out doesn't include that this is requested for a variance from being considered a multi-tenant building, then I can understand the confusion.
But we agreed that the variance request is off the table because we've already considered that. And from what I see in your application and the attachment to that, if we were going to, just hypothetically, if we were going to talk about a variance request, the request is identical to the one that we considered and did not approve in November. So we can't consider that one again.
I think there is some nuance there, and I understand the question on it being an identical variance because the outcome would be the same for what was asked for. But previously, the request was that this be a variance on just only being allowed the 2 signs. Here, the request is a different request because it's based on being considered a multi-tenant building.
Okay, so we're back to the appeal of the planning director's interpretation of the code. So I want to be fair. I want to hear your arguments. I think what the best way is for us to proceed is to give you the chance to make your case on an appeal basis, not on a variance request basis. Okay, so we're not talking about the 7 criteria, the Duncan criteria. We're just talking about the appeal at 150.104, and that's what was noticed, and that's what I think we can only consider. So let's go ahead and proceed that way, and our board members can then weigh how they feel or the significance of the lack of that notice within 20 days of the planning director's decision. And other considerations that may come up. Does that sound fair to you?
That sounds fair, sure.
Okay. Sorry for the big, long-winded.
No, that's fine.
But I wanted to just get that straight because I didn't want to get into a situation where we were considering an appeal that we've already, or a variance that we've already considered, and we're considering an appeal that wasn't noticed properly. So with that out of the way, go ahead.
Yeah, I won't reiterate too much of what was already submitted and included in the packet. I'm sure this board's reviewed it, and so I'm not going to sit here and reread kind of what we submitted. But what I would highlight is that these 2 businesses and the landlord invested significant money with the non-conforming, so to speak, sign at issue. They built around that sign that's existed for years and years and years. I'm not sure if the picture did it justice, that the existing sign doesn't look so great, that's been there for years. They're trying to invest more of their money to make that sign look better. And I think the key consideration that we'd really like the board to consider here is that when you look down that neighborhood in East Wooster, when there is an end unit of a multi-tenant or multi-business building, they have 3 signs. I noted the addresses, but the businesses, it's El Zarape, it's Starbucks, and it's Chipotle. So all of those businesses are in a multi-tenant or multi-business building, but they have 3 signs. And I think what the key character of these restaurants and these, which are primarily food service, like the tenants in this particular building, foot traffic is key. Getting the name out is key. People drive down, they see signs, and they pull in because they decide to go there. The businesses and multi-business units that aren't on the end are not treated that way. They have two signs. If you look at what's in El Zarape, that's kind of the main other building on East Wooster. If you go down that business park, they have the front-facing signs, then they have the signs up on the big tall signs on East Wooster. So here, these two buildings, these two businesses are both end buildings because there's only two. It's almost identical to, which is 1560 East Wooster, where there's two separate businesses. It's Starbucks and it's Chipotle. They both have a sign on the front, sign on the side, and then a large sign out front advertising for both of them. So what is being requested here, and I made a note when they purchased the building, I don't think this was really a consideration of the signs that would be allowed because they saw other similar businesses. It just seemed if that's how it goes. Most people, like you said, the zoning code can be dense and confusing. And here this restriction is in a footnote, really, due to the cross asterisk on the chart. So they're not asking to be treated any different than the other businesses on East Wooster have been treated with their signage, which is what is kind of the genesis for their request. They want to fix that sign. They want it to look nice. They built the building around it, and they'd like to be able to follow through with their plans to make that signage what they had submitted, to repair it, so to speak, make it nicer, I mean, for lack of better words.
Anything else?
I don't believe so. I don't know. No, I don't think so. I think that,
If you want to speak, please come up to the podium. And if you would, please state your name and address for the record.
Ryan Lapointe, 2730 Centennial Road, Toledo.
And you confirm for me that you swore your oath to tell the truth.
I did.
Thank
yes.
Go ahead.
I actually stood up. I didn't know I'd have to be here, but I did it preemptive. I'm the development director for Wingstop and Jersey Mike's for our small company. We have 70, 80 stores around the company or around the country. I'm going to give you a little background of this. So we work with Mowers. We were originally going to lease the building strictly for Wingstop, and realized there was too much improvements that we would have to do to that property, and it's been noted. I've met you guys. Number one, Bowling Green has been great to work with, but so we realized that it was way too much to do that. So we would have to demolish the building and build new, and figured we could also bring in Jersey Mike's and do that. And the pylon sign was already there, so we developed the plan. And we went in with the intention, there was no mention of any of this in site plan approval with, anything that we did. It's there. We built it around. You can go over there. You can see it in the sidewalk. I know Bowling Green does not have a parking requirement. So we could have moved the building in the back. But we didn't, because the request from Bowling Green was you really wanted the curb cut on Wooster to be gone. So we complied with that. We did it. You guys, not when I say you guys, maybe not you, but so we agreed to that. So we had to move it up because we wanted the parking, and that pylon sign was existing, and I know it could not have been, it was grandfathered in. So it would not have been something that we could have applied for and did that. And by moving the building up, because we wanted the parking, we could not do a monument. There's not enough room. So we did that and had no idea, really, that this would ever be an issue. We're talking about 2 pieces of plexiglass. That's it. I mean, really, what we're coming down to. So we put over $2 million into this. I think the building looks great. Sign looks like shit. So I don't know what we do. If it doesn't get approved, it's gonna be there. Look like an eyesore. So, that's pretty much it. Again, had no idea about the 2, 3, or whatever. So,
Okay.
any questions for me?
Any questions from board members?
Yeah, I do have one.
Yeah,
You work directly with the people of the sign company, right?
we contract them.
Okay, but you were in contact with what the city told them and everything?
But it's after the fact.
Well, because they were told right up front the number
But
of
they weren't
signs.
told up front. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, no, I'm reading,
But
I'm just reading what
They were
the,
not told up front.
what planning department gave us to look at. And the fact it stated that the sign company were told exactly what signs they could have. And that they said, we will come back and ask for a variance in lieu of that.
Our process, so we went from lease to acquiring from the Mowers to going through this. Sign company was the last thing we contracted for after we designed the building. So we had engineers, we had everybody designed it, laid it out, built it. There was nothing for the sign company to do. Prior to that, there was no building. There was nothing there. We built the building with the assumption, which is stupid, it's one of our mottos, and we assumed but assuming that we could actually use it, otherwise, I don't know why why everybody approved the site plan with that, knowing we couldn't use it. And
I
then,
think
and then
we're
the sign
drifting-
company went in for, that's when we found out.
I think we're drifting off into the area of variance as opposed to an appeal of the interpretation of the zoning code from the planning director. And as I said, we have to stick with what's in the public notice and what we have to protect the public's interest in that way. And I don't want us to get too far, I'm talking mostly to the board here, I think, is that let's don't get too far afield from the idea that we're talking about an appeal that this applicant is making of the opinion and determination of the zoning, or I'm sorry, the planning director, as opposed to variance requests and getting into all those things that we talk about when we're into a variance situation.
I understand. I get emotional when I talk about it. It was 2.5 years of my life, and
I understand.
all of a sudden we get this, and
I used to do
quite
what you
frankly,
do.
it looks like shit. And we know that. It's going to be painted. It's going to be. And so I mean, I don't know if we go interpretations. Could I put McDonald's on there on that sign? Could I use it for something else that wasn't Jersey Mike's or Wingstop? Technically, I probably could. It's there. It's not. So it was. Look, I was kind of blown away that it actually didn't pass the last time. I don't.
Well, I supported it the last time, but we're not. That's not what we're really discussing. I think
Right.
Are we all in agreement that Heather interpreted the zoning correctly? Because I didn't hear any argument that she interpreted this. The planning director interpreted it incorrectly. Am I wrong? Because that's what the request is. And again, I would.
Well, we based it on an Arby's layout that was originally approved for a single building, right? That's how this all kind of came about. So because we put a wall up, that changes the zoning? That would be my
Yeah,
interpretation.
But again, we've already considered and decided on those factors. I don't
Right.
want
Okay.
to digress, but the variance for that sign, the pylon sign in 1993 was for setback, not number of signs.
Right.
So, but that's irrelevant. I think, as Jeff pointed out, we're here to talk about did the planning department make the right call when they interpreted the code in saying that this is a multi-tenant building with a shared wall, so therefore the code says that it's limited to 2 signs per business. So was there a mistake made there in that determination by the planning director?
Yeah, I guess we look at it because it's one owner. And there's 2 parcels and one owner. So we look at it, for me, it's one business. I understand the names may be different, but it's one business for us. There's not 2 separate owners. We didn't buy this as an investment and lease it out to 2 separate parties. It's one tenant, and that's us.
Okay, so not to, I can't think of a better word than offend. I don't want to offend you, but that's the first argument that I've heard relating to the interpretation of the planning director's interpretation of the zoning code.
And I'm not here to offend anybody. That's how
I'm not
we
either. I'm
looked
just
at
trying
it.
to search for a word
Hey,
here.
trust me. Look,
I truly, I don't
to get-
disagree with
I'm just trying to
anything
get
you've
that
said
sign.
tonight. Yeah, but if I employ that logic you just used, then you'd only be allowed 3 signs there.
Pardon
One
me?
owner.
True.
What, if you're one business, you get 3 signs.
You already got 4. That's a good point.
I agree.
But
I agree that
I'm-
sign looks
I didn't.
bad.
I understand the difference, but it's
We're just kind of stuck, I appreciate what you said, that you were surprised that it didn't pass the last time around.
Well, I was surprised it even went to that.
but-
quite frankly,
That's water over the dam, and we're here now with the potential to give you what you want, but it's got to be based on that appeal,
Right.
this interpretation issue. So, if you can come up with anything else besides you feel like it's one business as opposed to 2,
well,
if you can
that's
help
how
us get past the fact that it's got a common wall.
Well, I think Pete said it well, that there are other businesses that do have the 3 signs that are within that. So when I do initial site tours like this, I spend a lot of time in Bowling Green looking up and down the road. I never thought this would be an issue. And again, it was one of those things when we went in with our site plan, with the approvals, with everything. Signage comes after that. I found how our very first meeting that I had with the city was about that pylon sign. And we said, and they said, it's grandfathered in, we can do it. So we gave concessions, again, to the curb cut. I understand why you're shaking your head, but you got to also understand my kind of mentality. So I'm thinking, so it's there, we can use it. Again, it's 2 pieces of plexiglass. I'm not asking for a new sign. I'm asking to reface existing sign that identifies who is there. Right now, it's there, it's white, and we actually did that because it looked even worse. We could have left the, whoever was up there last, we actually made it look better. It's just it's simply replacing that and letting people know it's there. I'm not asking for a new sign, just to reface it. That's and I understand. I don't understand. That's why Pete was here. The law. I'm looking at like logic. What do we do with it if it's not? Again, by the letter of the law, could we lease it to McDonald's? Could we lease it to, Wendy's that's over there? Tim Hortons, could they do it because they're not on the property? Could we utilize it for something else that we wouldn't do, but it's there? All we want to do is identify who's there. And, I mean, I don't,
I don't know about those hypotheticals, but, again, I'm just coming back to what we can consider
right.
this evening. You come back up if you,
Just very briefly, because I hear what the board is asking, and asking for an interpretation of the determination. And I think that the determination is that an end unit building is considered a multi-business building, which is inconsistent with how the neighborhood has been treated. So what our request is that interpretation that other buildings have been given the benefit of, if they're an end unit, so if they have a corner, that they are not considered a multi-business unit or for the purposes of the zoning restriction, which is the two sign limitation as opposed to 3 that any other unit would have or any other business would have. That's what our request is. You're appealing that determination and interpretation.
two things. I think you're again wandering away from that opinion and interpretation of the zoning code by the planning director. The other thing is each variance request, if it were a variance request that comes before us, stands on its own. We don't look at what McDonald's did or what somebody down the street did. We consider each request individually. And finally, probably more importantly, is those businesses that you're pointing to were all permitted under the prior zoning code. This was a pretty major change in the current zoning code to limit these multi-tenant buildings to 2 signs. So, that's a real big factor there. But again, we still have to stick with that interpretation part of
Can
the
I
appeal
ask-
part.
One question. When was that new,
Step up if you would.
I'm sorry. When was that new zoning code?
2024 September
June of 2023.
23.
3. Sorry.
So about the time we went under contract with that property. The zoning changed, it changed during development. Just, yeah.
Point taken. Okay, do you gentlemen feel like you've gotten a chance to make your case? Have you said everything you want to say before we stop the public comment portion of the hearing? I want to make sure you get to say everything you want to say. Please confine your comments to because,
Pete, I don't think I have anything new.
okay,
Say it a different way, but I don't think.
okay. Anyone else care to make a comment, ask on this matter? Okay, we'll close the public comment portion of the hearing and we'll open it up to discussion amongst the board members.
I have, what was the zoning before, do you remember, for business, multi-business, was it more signs than 2? Do you remember if it was 3?
You're testing my memory here.
I am testing your memory.
I believe it was 3 per business, but we were trying to clarify language because it did mention something about a single business in a larger commercial strip, but it wasn't clear. It said or, and it didn't.
Okay.
It pointed to you maybe could have 3. It just wasn't clear, is what I recall. And that's what we were trying to clean up.
Bob, you were on the planning commission, I think, when this was all under review. Do you recall discussions about this issue and the need to limit or the desire to limit multi-tenant buildings to 2 signs?
I don't recall a discussion of that particular point. I do seem to recall that I have trouble placing the timing of it, but I do seem to recall over the years, even goes back to when I was on city council, that there was an opinion of a number of people in town that we had that we allowed too many signs, and that when the zoning code was revised, that issue should be addressed, sort of generally speaking. Now, I don't recall it being specific to multi-tenant buildings, but I think there was a general sentiment that the prior code might have been too generous in terms of allowing too many signs. And the particular area that I know seemed to come up in conversation was that area between Mercer Road and I-75 out there as a prime example of that.
I apologize. I sort of went against my own admonition there and brought something up that's not related to the appeal matter. So, but thanks for that clarification. Gentlemen, we're awful quiet this evening. Anybody else have any?
There's been scintillating discussion. Now let's get into this a little bit. Since we have the folks here who normally just give us the disimpassioned, just the neutral reading of things, but since your opinion and your interpretation is what's being called into question, I'd like to ask you some questions. Is that fair?
Yes.
All right. So you've heard the discussion tonight. Are you comfortable with your description of, quote, there are multiple businesses on the same parcel or located within the same building?
Yes.
You're comfortable with that? I go out there, I see two businesses tonight with two entrances. And we're glad they're in town. That's the thing. We're glad they're here. Would you like to weigh in on, even though we don't go by precedent, the question being raised of other developments in Bowling Green, end cap stores who have their signage and still have pylons?
Can you help me, Jerry, with how that goes towards the appeal issue that we need to consider?
Because at the end of the day, if we can just stop dancing for a second among all of us, we're sitting here and talking about there's an appeal of the interpretation of the zoning code, which is what I've been asking about. If we grant that variance, you know where we're going next, right? Pete, you're back up to say, well, now we have a different set of rules and we get all the signs that we wanted. Not all this, that's where we're going here. So you can try to separate the two. And yes, for tonight's purposes, are we going to give a variance on the interpretation and opinion of the zoning code by the planning director? But this is all aiming towards signs eventually, right? All right, let's stop that dance.
But variance is off the table. We've already considered the variance request and it was not approved.
But when it's back in a new form that would allow how many signs?
Only 3, I think. For a single business is only 3 signs, and they already got 4.
And this is where you want to go? Fewer signs? Is that right?
No, we're,
Can't talk to them.
Well, okay. All right. We're not going to be done with this then, because I understand where you're going with this. Let me also ask Chase if I can. I'm reading from the fact, city staff let the sign company know that the zoning code only allows 2 signs for multi-tenant structure. They were notified of all of this.
I was not here at the time of those communications.
Yes, that's why we gave you that exhibit showing the permit and the condition on there.
Okay.
And just to add to this, I think what they're saying is if you did not agree with our interpretation, then that would be, or my interpretation, that would be 3 signs allowed per business. So 3 for Unit A and 3 for Unit B.
Right.
Which would equal what they already have is the 2 wall signs for each business plus utilizing the pylon.
Okay. Thank you. I mean, I would, like Mr. Crawford, I voted in favor of this last time, realizing if you were after a new pylon, you're not going to get that in Bowling Green these days. But you have an inherited pylon, which was, to me, a total eyesore. A lot of money's been invested at that corner after years of other things coming and going at that, and I was a yes vote on that. And what you are doing tonight is, and I think it's very good, Spangler Nathanson, good law firm, finding another way to get back at the sign issue. That's what we're doing here tonight.
through the appeal
Got it.
of the interpretation of the planning director.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Heather, when did they put the actual request in? Would it have fallen within the old zoning code or within the new one? You know?
Do you mean the permit application?
Yeah. Right. When
For
they,
the signage or the building?
it would have to have been, well, if the building plan was put in and they're looking at, we are assuming we can make this out of that based on the old thing, I guess, you know? If when they put it in and say, we're gonna build here, we think we can do it this way. But I also think that it was only gonna be one business initially anyway. And then they decided to go with two when they tore it down. Correct? From what I understood what he said.
So if we're looking at the building, we actually approved the site plan on September 27th of 2024. I don't know the exact date it was applied for. I know as he
Okay.
mentioned in the discussion, we worked together for a while
Right, well, that.
with the development.
Signs.
When they put in the request, that's the clock starts at that point in my eyes.
The sign application was made August 4th, 2025.
Okay.
Anybody else? More discussion?
I guess I would like to see them, in my opinion, I wish they had their sign. I wish we could grant that they could use that sign. But I'm a little bothered by questioning our planning director's interpretation when that really wasn't ever, that appears to me, that really wasn't ever in question, her interpretation of it. That's not why we're here.
I'm not going to express an opinion about whether or not I think they should or shouldn't have the number of signs they want, but it's pretty clear to me that we were asked to consider allowing 3 signs through an area variance, and that was not approved. And that's full stop, that's off the table. I don't blame you a bit for coming back and trying to appeal this whole idea of the opinion and interpretation of the zoning code by the planning director to sort of get another bite at the apple. But as Jeff points out, I have a hard time, I haven't heard any evidence offered that leads me to believe that that interpretation and opinion of this planning director is wrong. So based on that, I just have a hard time coming to yes on this. I'm sorry.
Yeah, man, this has kind of gone off the rails a little bit, it seems like, and I apologize for not hatching some of these issues out the first time. And I guess based on what's just in front of us, we're only interpreting whether the interpretation of the definitions were correct and not any of the previous, points from the previous hearing. Based on just this application, it's tough to support. But the fact of the matter is we got a terrible sign that is legal. So I'm not really sure. I know what I think is best, and then I know what's I think technically is our obligation. So that's my feelings.
But would it require us to vote that Heather interpreted it wrong?
Right.
Yes.
And that, to me, I just can't vote that she interpreted it wrong because she clearly didn't.
I would concur.
And even the folks making the request admit that she didn't.
David, Bob, anything from that end?
I asked my questions.
Jay?
Well, I totally agree with the planning director's interpretation of the thing. I know, that pulls an eyesore out there, but I think the new zoning is what we kind of stood on last time we kind of want to stick with that. Get a nice clean look on these multi-buildings that have, we don't want signs all over the place. And I kind of agree with that. So that's,
I guess one of the thoughts that crosses my mind is that it's a little tough for these folks to take, partly because when the request for the variance was considered before, of course, I wasn't here then, I wasn't on the board at that point in time, but it failed by a 3-3 vote. It didn't like lose 7-0 or 6-1. It was a tie vote, which means there wasn't a majority in favor of, but that's a tough way to lose on a tie vote with one member of either the seat was open or one member of the board wasn't here that night, so to cast the tie-breaking vote. So I think it makes it difficult from their end of things. But on the other hand, I think the ordinance and Heather's decision is clearly what the ordinance says. She's not having to make any far-fetched interpretation to come to the result that she came to. She just read the ordinances, and it's pretty clear cut. So I don't think I can support their request because the issue is, did she make a mistake? The answer to that is no, she didn't make a mistake given the ordinances she was working with.
I mean, I also feel that, I mean, they can take it to court. I mean, that's the first one. They don't like it, I guess.
Okay.
Not that I want it to, but.
All right. Is there a motion for the disposition of this case?
We're going to come out session first,
Already did.
go back into public session.
We're fine.
I so move.
You're moving.
Let's make a positive motion. Move that the request be submitted or approved as submitted.
Yes, that's what I did.
Okay. Is there a second?
Wait, I need to hear the motion. What are we?
Yeah.
That the request be approved as submitted. I'd like to make the motion in a positive way, not that we
Okay. I see.
move to not approve the.
I move to
You can
approve
vote
the request
As submitted.
as submitted.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved
Who was
by
that?
Mr. Sockman, seconded by Mr. McCumber, that the request be approved as submitted. Will the secretary please call her? Is there any more discussion, first of all? Okay, hearing none, will the secretary please call the roll?
Jerry Anderson.
No.
Brad Noble.
No.
Jeff Crawford.
No.
Tim Emmert.
No.
Bob McCumber.
No.
David Flager.
No,
Jay Sockman. No.
Okay, gentlemen, your request was not approved. You may appeal to the Wood County Court of Common Pleas if you so choose. Thank you. All right. Lobby visitation. Anyone have anything that they would like to discuss with us this evening? Anything else from the board? All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
so moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Adjourned.